Good morning, councillors. Good morning, staff. Good to see a large number of here on the take those watching on 4-day committee in 2nd of April 2026. Could we please all be upstanding for the council prayer, and I invite Councillor Diana Beard to recite the prayer for us. Thank you.
Almighty God, as members of the Rangitikei District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you'll give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities and the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Okay, you're all good to go there. Welcome, Justin, Humble Committee Chair over there. Thank you for coming along to today's meeting. Moving through our agenda as circulated. Item number 2, apologies. I have received apologies from His Worship the Mayor, Andy Watson, and Councillor John Hainsworth. I've received no other apologies. I'll move from the chair that apologies be accepted. Seeking a seconder, Councillor Sharlin. Thank you, Councillor Sharlin. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Public forum, item number 3 on the agenda. I have received no notification of public forum for today. So therefore, moving direct to item number 4, conflict of interest. Councillors, once again, you're all well aware. Does anybody have any conflict of interest they wish to declare on today's order paper? Not seeing any, being none. If you feel as you do or may have a conflict of interest throughout today's proceedings, please raise it with the chair at the time. Confirmation of order of business. I have been not notified of any changes in our order of business as in the order paper circulated publicly and online. Are there any notifications of order of business changes? Looking at staff, being none. Moving on to item number 6, which is the follow-up actions from previous meetings. We will note that the follow-up actions of the previous meetings do date back to last year, as this is our first assets and infrastructure meeting for this triennium. However, I acknowledge that we have had a number of assets workshop where we've been discussing a number of the matters that are on today's order paper. So stepping through the items there are only 4 as listed. Item 1, that is listed as being, this will be supplied at the next meeting. Now, that one there is, Arno, if it's to be supplied at the next meeting, my question is, does that make the status completed?
It does. So that would have been supplied at one of the workshops or one of the previous meetings.
Okay. So that's what that relates to.
Yeah,
because I just noted status has been completed there. Thank you for the clarification on that. Item number 2 is the Napier Taihape Road next steps. We have had a couple of workshops where we've discussed these issues on that section of our roading network. That there is also listed as completed. Anything from the floor on that one? Giving you a chance just to refresh yourselves on that. So we're happy with the status of the item 1 and 2 being completed. Therefore, they could be removed from our action list. Item number 3, Martin Water Strategy in progress. And I note that we have a couple of matters coming up on that in today's meeting and next week's meeting primarily.
Yep.
So we'll leave that one as a status as being in progress. Members are happy to leave that sitting as that. And the other one is item number 4. This dates back some time. In progress. Does it need to stay in progress, or what is the issue? I mean, it's quite an old item. If it's got some complexities, I'm wondering, is it something that we need to be, does it sit there if it's not going to be actioned any further?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason why it's still there, it's a funding issue. So this was not part of any of the budgets. And our commitment is to keep looking at it and see at the end of every financial year if there is some budget to get it done. And that's kind of why it's still there.
Okay.
So I think it's safe to say they will not be funding this financial year either. We're going to have to come to council about the impact of the recent weather events as it is. So
okay.
I'm not sure how relevant it will be to leave it on here, whether Darren, he's aware of it and whether it just goes into maybe the asset management plan in future as a tag to see if there's any potential funding.
That's pretty much what I was thinking. It has been signalled. And Mr. Black, you're here in the room with us, and thank you as our roadings operations manager in that respect. Are you happy that you've got this captured or can capture this as an action for future applications for unsubsidised fundings and such things to NZTA?
Yeah, we've definitely got on our radar. Been looking at Criterion Street, especially around Tomato Peak. We've had the people down at the centre there talking about crossing and all sorts of other things. So we have been looking at it. But yeah, funding issues are the problem.
So it kind of fits in with a general overlay of all those works that are happening down in Bulls.
Yeah.
So would it be something that should be removed from this action list, just stating that it actually goes way back to 2004 when it was raised, and we're well aware of some of the complexities of funding constraints that we have within NZTA? Are the committee happy to have that removed or status given as off this action list for further reporting to this committee? Yep, members are happy with that. So if we could just action that to tidy that up, seems to me to be sitting around for quite some time.
Mr. Chairman, just on that, I think there's probably more of an issue, as Dave was saying, on Criterion Street with trucks now.
Yep.
And down here. I would imagine.
And Mr. Black, you're aware of some of those issues and things, and that's what you alluded to before around Tomato Peak, correct?
There's a wider issue with intersections to Highway 3 and 1, which we have addressed with NZTA, and it's not high on the priority list, but we are niggling.
Yep. All I'd say is keep rattling that chain. Of that cage, as it were. Thank you, Councillor Charlin, for raising that. If members are happy, we'll remove that from the action list. Doing nothing more on the action list, I will move from the chair that it be received and updated as per the discussions just held. Seeking a seconder. Councillor Buckendale, thank you for seconding. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Will you just record those actions to come out of that? Thank you. Chair's report, as circulated. I take it as read. I don't need to go through that in any such detail. I'm sure you will have all taken the time to read that. Just my loose thoughts and thinking and sharing it with you all as we progress to some difficult decisions that we need to make as a council, and not only so much around this meeting of council, but other meetings. We've got to always have these questions floating around our heads, and I encourage you all to think about that when coming to your decisions. So I'll move from, if there is any discussions on the chair's report as circulated. Not seeing hands being done, I'll move from the chair that it be received, seeking a seconder. Councillor Field, thank you. All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried, thank you. Moving to reports for information, and we have the project update report. So I pass to the team collectively, I think, to step us through this one, because we have you all in the room. Again, thank you for being with us. I'll pass it to you, Arno, to step us through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think just the first point to make, this is the first time we've tried the new format. So any feedback that you've got, we'd welcome that. And really the idea is an easier format for you to drag your eye to where there might be a problem. Also, what we'll do at the next one, there will be another column under status that shows you the previous month, so that you can easily see it's gone from green to orange, or it's gone from red to green. So you can quickly see if it's better or worse than last time you looked at it. So you wouldn't have to go back to the previous report to try and figure that out. So like I say, any comments, we'd welcome all of those.
Yeah.
I find it a lot easier to read, and
Right.
I think it's a positive move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Horn.
Then we start off with the wastewater projects. Today, I've invited Steve Kahn to come have a conversation with you on two or three of these projects. So Steve is an external resource for us. He brings a lot of expertise in the water industry, and we've been making use of his services across some of the more complex wastewater projects. So today he's just got a presentation for you, just as an update on on the three projects that he's working on.
Councillors, this is on your big tin cans, if you've got it there as it was just updated.
If I can suggest, Steve, if you can just introduce yourself to the new councillors.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Arno. As Arno's alluded to, my name's Steve Kahn. I run my own small water engineering advisory consultancy. Been in the game, engineering consultancy for sort of 30+ years. I've got quite a long track record history in this region. Used to live in Palmerston North for 10 years or so, going back some time. But yeah, familiarity, been working on Rangitiki District Council projects since about 2001, believe it or not. So, and have been, obviously, haven't been in this room for a while, but certainly have been involved with the previous council on some of the wastewater projects in the region, supporting, I know, by way of consultancy. So, yeah, I'm keen to talk today. I assume this works the slides, correct? So, there's a lot going on in the sector at the moment, as you're aware, with reform. Particular technical speciality and area of interest for me is wastewater engineering, both collection systems and treatment. So I want to talk briefly. I've got 20 minutes or so, I understand. So I'll work through some material, just what's happening from a regulatory and statutory point of view nationally with the standards. I'll talk about what we're doing at Taihape, what we're doing at Ratana, and also the largest project, Martin de Bull's centralisation project, just where we're going with that and what's the status, and what's the forward look with that as well. So that's what I'm hoping to cover over the next 20 minutes or so. So central government's put out now, just before Christmas, finally published the what I've referred to there as the National Wastewater Discharge Standards. So there's a standard that relates to when you're discharging from your treatment plant to waterways, water, which can be either marine environments or river environments. There's one that also covers discharges to land. There's a standard that talks about biosolids, that is sludge management. And there's a standard also being stood up now that talks about network overflows from the reticulation and bypasses of treatment plants. So all these are very relevant and pertinent to a council such as Rangitiki, particularly when one is reconsenting treatment plant discharges, which is what we're about here with these three projects. So what they do now, this is national consistency nationally. What levels of treatment do you have to have for different receiving environments you're discharging to? And some of the previous councillors I've presented to may be familiar with this table. So the way it works is where you have waterway discharges, they might be anything like a lake or a wetland, an enclosed waterway. They might be a river or stream, and based on the volume of flow you're putting into that versus the volume of flow going past in the river or stream, come up with a different level of what we call dilution. And so the higher levels of dilution that you have, the lower levels of treatment the standards permit, if that makes sense. So those numbers there are the allowed concentrations of various pollutants that are covered by the standards. So when you have a high dilution category, that is a low discharge to high river flow, that is your high dilution category, and that the standards then permit a lower level of treatment on those discharges. So it's a risk-based thing based on the receiving environments. Okay, and that's now consistent nationally. These standards were enacted just before Christmas last year. So all the projects we've been looking at, there was a bit of a pivot since that time to actually now make sure that what we're doing is in line with the new standard. And then once you're out of rivers, you're into estuaries and coastal environments and open ocean discharges. And they've got different limits as well into those marine environments. All right, those pollutants that are sitting there or contaminants, they're they're consistent for all those waterway environments. All right. A lot of, don't get caught too much on the numbers, but the real message is the level of treatment you have to have is dictated by the receiving environment to which the effluent is being discharged. Move on. So at Taihape, so people in the room appreciate there was an upgrade to the membranes done a couple of years ago. There's a storage and pump station put in at Papco Road, a similar period, but there's still operational issues there that relate mainly to the process, but also the controls of the plant. It'd be fair to say, due to the consent conditions that we have there, and it's an historical issue, council struggles to meet its consent requirements, particularly in periods of wet weather. There is in the Taihape reticulation network very high levels of what in the industry we call infiltration and inflow. That is rainwater that inadvertently gets into the wastewater network. I've done a lot of work in this space over the journey. I've written the national manual for in New Zealand and Australia. So we sort of know. I'd like to think you're getting the best advice in this space about inflow and infiltration reduction. So the extra hydraulic load coming from the rainwater is actually stressing out the treatment plant process there at the moment, and that is largely the reason for the missing consent compliance level. It's overloading the ponds, as you can see there, and also there's membranes and clarifiers there as well. All right, so the solution really, I believe at Taihape, and this is where we're heading, we're just trying to quantify this now and scope that, is to reduce the inflow and infiltration down to levels that the current treatment plant can handle. Because it's those extra loads that are putting undue stress onto the treatment process that's there. So people will appreciate, Taihape, that the network, the pipe network is pretty old, and it was built at a time that, you know, many decades ago. And as its age gets on, the system deteriorates. And in rainfall events, that means through cracked pipes and everything else that excessive rain is getting into that wastewater network. So the idea and the solution here is to reduce the inflow and infiltration down to match the level that meets the capacity of the current treatment processes. Okay. So there are some other works to be done at the treatment plant to enhance performance of the treatment plant, but the real kicker here is to get the flows down to something that's reasonable. The flows coming in the front gate of the treatment plant. Now, we've done a lot of what we call field source detection works, and councillors from Taihape may or may not be aware of recent field investigation works we did up there. And historically, smoke testing, where we put smoke into the sewers and see if it comes out of downpipes and road sumps and the like, you know, that proves the connection between the stormwater and the wastewater. We've done a number of visual inspections on properties looking for where gully traps are too low and downpipes discharge into the sewer. And we're just about to embark on some CCTV inspection of the sewers themselves to understand the condition of the actual pipe network. Now what we've established is those inflow defects, that is where stormwater is directly connected to the wastewater network through either downpipes discharging to gully traps or low gully traps that drain backyards or concrete areas or whatever, driveways. There's a number of those in the network. We've actually identified specifically where they are, and it is intended that they be rectified, that is removed, so that that inflow source is removed from the network. Now, my experience is that doing that in Taihape would reduce the flows coming into the treatment plant by maybe 10%. The quantum and type of those defects, the estimate of the capital value that's required to remove those defects is less than $100,000. They are on private property. Strictly speaking, they are the responsibility of the homeowner. Requesting the homeowner to repair those defects and pay for that is, a council is well within its rights to do that. They are privately owned assets. I would contend in this case, given the quantum and the net effect and the drivers for enhancing the operation of the treatment plant, it may be worth considering council actually funds those repairs. They will get done in that process rather than leaving it to the person to repair, or the homeowner to repair. It will take a long time. And you may not get that outcome because people just won't get around to doing it, or don't want to do it, or don't want to spend the money.
Just on that one, Steve, if I may, is it fair to say that whilst those numbers are financial numbers and has a rating impact, so does infringement for a not meeting our consents also have a rating impact. So it's got to be balanced in councillors as to where it is prudent to spend the infringement costs at the same time.
Now, it's a philosophical or even political question to answer. Is it appropriate for council to spend money on private good or private benefit? These are privately owned assets. I would suggest in this case that it is worth council spending that money, because you're going to get the return on the fact that you're probably going to reduce the flows in the network by 10%, and therefore your problems at the treatment plant. For 70, I've said 70 grand here, that's about what they're worth. You'll easily get that benefit in reduction in costs you need to spend at the treatment plant.
Councillor Pickett.
My question is, when you're talking about homeowners, where the issue sits, if council hadn't gone through this process, would homeowners even know that there was an issue?
Probably not. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So given that they wouldn't know that, and that, so when you say that the problem is it been caused by them themselves because of what they've done, or has it been caused because of the system of?
Often, yes, the first part of that, councillor. Yeah. A plumber will come and there's a downpipe. The downpipe's going to get connected to the nearest hot pipe that's there. Unfortunately, if that happens to be the sewer pipe, that's what will happen. And so, any on-property things is the responsibility of the homeowner. And over time, this has happened in a number of places up there.
Thank you, Councillor Fee.
So is 10% adequate?
No, because that's the next part of the thing is we need to reduce the inflow and infiltration in the network by sort of 40 to 50% to match the level, the capacity of the existing treatment process.
Right.
But there's other means by which you do that, and that's the next phase. So these home-based defects are what we call inflow, it's stormwater inflow. The other part is infiltration, where the pipes are cracked, the manholes that are leaking, not so much up there, but that's what we call infiltration. So inflow and infiltration, there's two components here.
Okay.
This is the inflow part we're talking about here.
Councillor Wall.
So through the chair, Steve, that 10% is possibly about what you expect, or?
Based on my own experience, I've done probably hundreds of these things around Australia, New Zealand and Australia. For removing inflow defects of the severity and quantity that you have in Taiwan, you'll probably get the flows coming to the treatment plant down by about 10%. And it's just like we talk colloquially a low-hanging fruit. I would say this is a classic.
Just take one more from Councillor Charlotte on this one.
Just through the chair again to Steve, going back to the original slide about discharge of waterways, where does this fit with the iwi aspirations of no discharge to waterways at all?
I would say it's an issue that it's counter. It's not a lot. It's not a lot.
So just with this is an information presentation from Steve. It's not a decision-making one. There will be a series of decisions we need to come out. And just finally on for Pickett Order, some of these things may be historic. When you asked about the homeowners, it might have been two homeowners before.
Exactly.
So it needs to be understood that high likelihood that they're not aware.
But all these programs, all these programs will, once we get into it, there's a whole education campaign to be done here about your responsibilities, council responsibilities, who owns what, how does it work? But a lot of people have got no idea what happens, underground. Yeah, okay. That's just how it is, sorry.
Yeah, one little one.
One more. So just in lieu of that, and from what I understand, this has been an ongoing problem for many, many years. It didn't just happen yesterday. Just taking on board what you just said, what are we doing about that as a council to educate?
I think Steve's just nailed it. It's part of an ongoing program. We've already started the program of identifying. Once we get to that, my assumption is that we'll need to make some council decisions around how do we fix, and who's paying is one of them, and then how do we do that education process going through as the next start. Martin as a township went through this a number of years ago to also try and help and alleviate and identify I&I. So it's something that's happened in the district before. Carry on, Steve.
Yeah, cool. So the other part of it is, Councillor Dalgetty's point about, is that enough? No, it's not. So you're then getting into fixing up the pipe network, the council-owned assets. And that's why we're doing the CCTV inspection, about to do that. Peter's Sharp's running with that. So that will help us really inform how bad that pipe network is and what's the best way to reduce the infiltration component of that. So if you're going to rehabilitate the network to the extent that's required, you're probably looking at the thick end of $3 to $4 million of that. That's the order of. But to not do that, you're going to get a far bigger need for expenditure at the treatment plant. So it's prevention rather than cure here. That's the thing we're trying to do. It's more a long-term solution, the preventative part rather than the fix at the end. We're actually stopping the water getting into stuff.
It would be fair to say that it's an old network like all of our towns, but the thought processes about I&I may not have been forefront of their mind in their design and build and things going back all those years. It might not have been a consideration, so it's something that we're picking up on now.
So there's some short-term things we're looking at, and then the long-term stuff. Certainly the long-term is reducing the eye on the network, but there's that the pond there is full of sludge. It's the solids that have accumulated over years and years. We need to desludge the ponds. That will free up more capacity to actually let them do their treatment. You appreciate it's half full of sludge, right? So there's only half the capacity available for treatment at the moment. So we've got to get rid of the sludge, and that's not a simple task, but people do it. That's just a long-term maintenance thing, really. And then fixing up some of the treatment process and the sequencing of that. And there's some other work being done, about to start again, just looking at that in detail as to what's involved in that. So there's some CapEx planned for the network and some CapEx, but not a huge amount planned for the treatment plant to actually get both parts operating appropriately, and a consent that's in accordance with the new regulations.
Yes, Steve.
How often should you be desludging?
Well, 10 years, every 10 years, generally.
Do you know how long since we've done it?
Just on that point, there's a lot of factors that play into that. So it depends on how it's designed. Normally in the design, there'll be space at the bottom for accumulation, and that could be 20 years, could be 30 years. But they do have a lifespan. So at the end of it, you need to desludge and then continue.
So that's Taiapi. I'll move to Ratna. Sorry.
Sorry, so if we're going to take this water out of the wastewater system, we're going to go implication. I mean, that's going to have other drainage implications for Taihape.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. It goes into the stormwater network that's there now.
And the stormwater network is up for it?
Generally, yeah. I mean, there's road runoff and directing it out to the street, and it takes into the roading sort of stormwater stuff then. Yeah, but that's.
Is there a capacity issue there?
No, I don't think so. No. Gravity is your friend particularly on the western side of the state highway. Yeah, people know.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I'll talk about Ratna. I'm mindful of time. So people appreciate one of council's obligations is to remove the current wastewater discharge to Lake Waipu there. So the current solution currently formally accepted solution is to pump the effluent coming from the oxidation pond there to land that's been reserved beside the Whangaehu River. And there's a problem with that is, and then land irrigation. You need a big winter storage for that, just because of the climate and the soils and everything else. That is, you store the flow in winter and then irrigate it on the land in summer when the land can actually take it. All right, now there's a capital estimate on that one at the moment. There's a pipeline and everything to do that, of course, and then the irrigation infrastructure itself. So there's sort of $8 to $9 million capital reserve for that for a town of 350 people. It seems a little bit on a unit cost basis, a bit out of whack really. But the thing is, as this solution was further evolved, we've worked out that the effluent in the ponds there is actually too saline for any irrigation solution. You can't irrigate onto anything, everything, there's no grass, nothing will work there because it's too saline. Now, why is it saline? There's a softening process at the water treatment plant that generates salts. Those salts are discharged into the wastewater stream. That's a holistic sort of view here. That's evolved through the evolution of this solution.
Councillor Allen?
The current solution involves pumping to Whangaehu River. What's happened to the suggestion that it be pumped to the Wanganui City Council? Yeah. I'll cover that, Councillor.
Made my mistake jumping ahead.
No, that's right. I'm just letting. I've talked about this with the previous council, obviously, so I'm just sort of backtracking a little bit in terms of what we've evolved. Yeah.
Have we bought land or we're going to buy land?
I can reply, we have purchased land. So we hold a piece of land down towards the coast. Yep.
So you would have to reduce that salinity to be able to irrigate onto land. Not even nasty sort of salt bush type plants you might get out the back of nowhere in Australia would survive that salinity. So what's the alternatives? So you can, the red line there, yes, you can pump to the prison connection at Kaitoki. That is one option we've looked at and put a cost on. The alternative is to potentially to the yellow line is push it out to Kotiata, and in doing so you could potentially reticulate Kotiata, and that effluent could then be potentially discharged via an outfall off the coastline at Kotiata.
Can I just add there for the committee, in Koitiata, I think we only have about 20 properties that are reticulated. All the rest of them are still on septic tanks with a disposal field somewhere. Those sections are quite small, so we're not 100% sure exactly how they deal with that, but it's not an ideal situation.
And the option to go out to sea gives that greater dilution impact is possible, but it's desirable, but it is possible under new standards.
I'll just jump back. So on the right-hand side, you're getting those marine discharges, and the new regulations give guidance as to what's needed for that.
Yeah, and in this case, it'll be the open ocean.
Potentially, if we make the outfall long enough, yeah. Or it can be the one next in from that if it's a shorter length outfall.
Decision making, but it's an option.
Yeah, correct.
Councillor Charlotte,
Will we accept the disposal to the sea?
Well, again, there'd be a lot of conversations to be had, but at the end of the day, this is a paper that's giving us some options that could be considered. There'll be a lot of steps to go through to consultate with many different people.
So the investigation thus far is suggesting the numbers. It's well worth looking at this option. Now there's all things that make an option work. One's the cost, but it's got to be feasible, and feasible is all about community, iwi, all that sort of stuff as well. Okay, so the numbers, just purely on the engineering of the numbers and with the regulations now, this I think is an option worth investigating further. So I've put those options up there, right? So the current options, as it's saying, 8 to 9. At Kaitoki, you could pump just Ratana to Kaitoki for about 4.5. Okay, that's not with Kotiata. Okay, keep that in mind. But you're then subject to a trade waste agreement with Whanganui District Council or the CCO that's getting formed there. What's the surety of that? What's the risk associated with that? That's your only solution. There's no plan B there. You are subject to their determinations about a trade waste agreement and the costs associated with that. There's no, I would perceive that to be a risk. And the unsurety about that in the future.
Councillor Fleet?
Can you just outline a bit further what those risks are?
Just the charges,
Right, we'll be beholden.
correct?
Vicky, kia ora.
Can we go back one slide, please?
Sure.
I think it's a slide prior. Sorry.
That's right.
When we've made a, so you put up there the estimate, an estimate of $8 million is for this project. And then you put underneath that 350 people and you made a comment about, can I just clarify that your comment was about it being uneven, the money and the amount of people that it's servicing?
Just
Can you explain?
just on a cost rate, that's quite a lot compared to other schemes around the country. That doesn't take into account any other considerations other than just the cost.
Yeah, so my question then would be, from your point of view, when would we stop and say, no, it is too much? I just know that this is another thing that's been on the table for many years.
Yeah.
Not just 2 minutes.
Well, it's a comparative thing, councillor, against other alternatives that might exist. That's why we've looked at the other things. I mean, what is, if it's the only option and you have to do something, you have to pay for it. But if there's other things that are feasible and can be accepted by the community, the whole community, then yes, you've got to look at those from as a professional advisor. You say, well, hang on, what's there now? Is there something smarter or better that will work both economically and for the community?
Okay, lots of hands going up here. Arno, you've got something to add to this part of the conversation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the reason why we're looking into this now is the change in the standards. So previously we had to comply with the one plan, we had no choice in the matter, but now under the standards, there are other options and we feel it's important to have a look at those and then bring something back to council to consider.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, just maybe even just to tie this one up. I looked at that too, so my little head went up a little bit too, like you, on this one, Kia ora. The reality of it is, it's a community as part of our community. It's a community within our district that we have a degree of responsibility for. Again, this is not a decision-making thing. This is just raising some issues about some of these things that we need to look about risks and costs and what is the best way for it. This is our responsibility to our district and to another community, just like Mangaweka, Bulls, Taipi, Martin, a whole lot. These are all our considerations.
And the thing is, at the moment, the discharge goes into the Lake Waipu there, right? So the whole idea is to not have that happening anymore. That's the starting point here. So that disappears. What's the best outcome on that? Right.
Councillor Allen?
Can I ask, I know through you, how much have we spent on land at Wangaihu for an option that might not be taken?
I have to dig deep. Councillor, I think that piece of land is 20 or just over 20 hectares all up. And I can't remember the cost. I think it was in the region of about 1.5 million, something like that.
So is the decision to purchase that land made almost redundant by a change of law in central government?
Potentially, but we always have to remember land only becomes more expensive. We can always sell it again later on if we need to. It's not a risky.
It seems to me as a councillor to have been a funny decision to spend money on land before we've decided that's the option.
Can I just say on that one, that was an active decision made by council at the time with a practical approach to, well, why can we, if we're going to consider this an option, we can't consider without having the land. So which comes first, the chicken or egg? We had to get the land and the option to get the land at the time came up to enable us to further a potential land discharge as we would have had to operate under that. And so the land could be, it could be leased out for farming, it could be leased out for grazing, it may generate some income as Mr. Bernardi said, it could be sold in the future. Was it a strategic decision to purchase it? Yes. Will it create some income? Potentially yes, as a leasehold. it was in the scale of things, it was a pragmatic step to take to enable that option to still be considered. Again, to come back to address the issue that we need to address out there at that part of our district.
Thank you.
Councillor Fee.
Oh, sorry, so rudely interrupted, sorry. But land does come down. I just dispute that comment that land only goes one way, but that was not my point. The salinity issue is new information that we didn't have when we bought that farm. And so that to me is what's impactful in that decision.
Not only.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to pick that up before this evolution of this solution went too far. Yeah.
Just go to Councillor Diana.
Got two questions. First is, so we've got the CapEx here.
Yep.
What is the factor for the OPEX on it? In general terms for
Well,
any of
relatively,
those
you mean?
solutions? Pardon?
What, I mean, yes, it's a relativity between you.
Well, I
between the
mean,
OPEXs.
we've got some hard and quotes numbers up there for the potential cost of the, but what's the ongoing OPEX of those? I mean, there'll be a factor, but is it different for each of those factors?
Yeah, and part of the next stage I'm suggesting is refining some of that whole of life, get a whole of life cost, which is including CapEx and OPEX. Just intuitively, the further you pump, the higher the OPEX costs are. Okay. So the Kaitoki option is the furthest pump distance. Yeah, so that will have the highest OPEX, just purely on an energy cost basis. Yeah. Treatment wise, it's pretty similar. Yeah. But so what's actually happening here with those numbers? Currently the money's 8 to 9. I reckon for about 5.5 in the outcome, plus you're reticulating Kotiata, and you've got 2.5 or 3 change out of it. You've just won $2 or $3 million.
Just mindful that we do need to need more shine, but also mindful that these, again, as I said it before, it's an information document. None of these options are firm. They're just indicative. This is just a status report update of options we need to consider under the new discharge regulations. And it's right to bring it back to us. So we can't be digging down too much as to what operational costs might be when we haven't chosen one. It is a factor, but this has just been brought to our attention to guide us. Diana, one more. We are pushing
Last
for
one,
time.
yes. And this is my schoolgirl chemistry. I confess that. But yes, we talk about salinity, and we're sitting right next to an acidic river. Is there not some kind of relationship, something that we could do there? Is it?
Well, then you back into a river discharge, you're saying?
Well, I don't know. The same.
Yeah, the whole idea was to avoid that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's push on.
Sorry, so no, so there's yeah. So this Kotiata, you could put the reticulation is actually what we call pressure sewer. So each or every second house has one of these little pumps, okay? And the pipe network is actually pressurized. It's not a gravity network. Now, why do you do that? It's because in a place that's got sandy soil, it's going to be easy to construct. You're not going to have wet sand. You're trying to dig in, and small bore pipes that are laid fairly shallow compared to a gravity network, and you're preventing inflow and infiltration in the future. Okay, there's a pipe that's about 5.8 k's long from Ratna down to Kotiata. Now, if you look at how long's the outfall if you were to go down that path? Well, that's what we need to do. On the right-hand side of that table, that open ocean discharge requires you to be in a 10-metre water depth. Okay. To get to 10-metre water depth at that point, you're about 1.5 kilometres out from the shoreline. Okay. How would a thing like this look? It's only a small pipe. It's only like a 150 diameter pipe, and you actually you go and lay it out, but it's got these concrete sort of anchors that drops it on the seafloor. So it's all doable, and the costs I'm getting are from the contractor that does this stuff in New Zealand. So I'm sort of reasonably comfortable with it. with it. That's how it's done. All this is feasible, but the idea is to evolve this further and document it in a report, which will then go through a council process.
So just what is the population of Kotiata, please?
There's only 100, it's like 100 or so houses. So it varies obviously substantially between on holiday seasons. That's the nature of it there. So 100, I think there's 100, I've got the reporting, there's 100 houses, so whatever that,
Okay, thank you.
permanent residents might be only 250, 200 people or something. Yeah. All right, so that's how it all looks. So, some engineering feasibility being done at the moment to get some better surety about those numbers. But there's a consentability issue then that we need to investigate. And, community and iwi acceptance. So I'm mindful of time, but this is I've left a more complex project to last. So, Martin to Balls, obviously for the sake of the new councils, I'm not sure where you're at in terms of understanding where you're at on this one, but there's a pipe in the ground at the moment that was funded through the government's COVID shovel ready money. That's the phrase. That's connects a pipeline that runs from the treatment plant at Martin down to Balls. There's just some pipe bridges that haven't been connected up just yet, but that's in train at the moment. So the intent is to actually have one treatment plant at somewhere down near Balls. Okay. So there's a number of options. We start out with like 50 options using some criteria. We've narrowed it down to about 2.5 or 3 right at the moment. This has been over a process. I've been involved in this since like June 2024. So the big kicker is that discharges to the Tūtainui stream are removed. That's it. Everything goes down to the Rangitikei River, down in that direction. There's options at the moment, 1 to 6, that retain the treatment ponds at both locations and utilise those for a purpose. There's an option 7 that has the ponds only for buffer storage. That is, when the inflow and infiltration is getting up and down, those ponds go up and down just to manage the flows coming out the back end, so that they're the same. The ponds go up and down. A couple of options have IR reduction programs inherent in them, that is, would reduce the flows. One of the other things, we're trying to bring ANZCO into the discharge, and this has come from Parawapawa, Ngāti Parawapawa. Let's have less, if we're going to have a discharge to the Rangitikei River, let's have less of them and bring ANZCO in. So ANZCO could potentially be a tradeways customer of the council. And we're just working our way through some detail on that one at the moment. But the key thing is nothing goes into the Tūtainui stream anymore. All right, so that's the real advantage. But there's more flow going into the Rangitikei River, but it will be of a far better quality than what it is at the moment, even from the Bulls.
Councillor Shalom.
The land we bought in Bulls is obviously not enough for what we're going to do. So
Correct.
what's
Now,
the
yeah.
situation with that?
Now, one of the options is for a hybrid land river discharge disposal. So irrigate to land in summer and discharge to the river in winter. That option is about 100% more expensive than the river discharge options, but it's still on the table. We've still got it there. So the location of that land is not ideal because of the conveyance infrastructure you need to get the wastewater from the plant down at Bulls back up to that. That's what makes it expensive, plus also the irrigation land that's there. It is not enough for what is needed because of the nature of the soil that's there. It ponds and floods in winter, the groundwater table's up quite high. It's just how it is. You would need, there's 300 hectares there, I think it is. You need probably another 120, 150, I think the number is, for that option. That makes that land disposal option very, very expensive.
If it was 100% land disposal.
Correct.
It's not suitable if it's 100%.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But the hybrid is still very expensive because you've got a lot of that infrastructure still there anyway that you need to get it there, even though it's not for the whole year. So a lot of these land irrigation options, and this is consistent with Rati, because of the nature of the soils and the climate here, you need a big winter, what we call winter storage. So all the flow goes into the storage in winter. It's like a big dam or lake, and then you irrigate from that in summer. So I'm mindful of time here. So now under those new regulations, there's different contaminant levels that are permitted for discharge to those receiving environments. Okay, so we're following the new regulations in the environment district. So we had, and then we've assessed those against a number of costs, but also non-cost criteria. That's how we're developing our shortlist. Now, this criteria has been developed amongst the team, amongst council, but Horizons, given they're going to be the consenting agency, they're comfortable with it as well. So we've had dialogue with Horizons all the way through the process here. So once the consent's lodged, there's no surprises from Horizons.
What's the iwi status on the going back to water fully?
They're appreciative of the cost differential between the river only option and they obviously, it's Ngāti Parawahawa. Obviously, their interest is more the Rangitikei. Ngāti Apa's interest is Tūtainui. Ngāti Apa's interest are well looked after because we're not having a discharge to the Tūtainui. Parawahawa are appreciative of the difference in costs. But at the same time, Councillor, we're looking now, if we're not using the ponds at Bulls, and we're just starting this process now, there's potential for a land passage discharge in that space next to the river there, which will help Parawahawa with their, I'd say acceptance, but yeah, they're a lot more comfortable with what we're talking about if we have such a discharge arrangement.
I think it's just important to note that they're part of the project team. They've been involved right
from day dot.
Yeah. So they're aware of all of it. Yeah.
And so we've taken them on a trip down at Ekatahuna. There's a land passage arrangement down there. There's one at Otaki. There's one at Fielding. We've done these visits with the reps from the two iwi groups. So that's where and on that knowledge, we're now evolving what it might look like at Bulls. One of their requests too was to bring the ANZCO discharge into the council system. But ANZCO, obviously, they have to reconsent their discharge in 2.5 years' time. But they were appreciative too that they're in the business of producing meat, not treating wastewater. And they're appreciative and they're keen to actually understand what a trade waste agreement with council or the CCO might look like before they make that decision. But that request certainly came from Parawahawa. Can we actually get rid of their discharge as part of this process? All right, so there's a lot of detail here. I haven't got too much time to, but you can see that the options on the left side are the ones that involve the land discharge. The ones that on the right side involve the river discharge. So there's quite a big capital gap in those. But yeah, because we've had the two iwi groups in the tent with us from day dot, everyone understands how they're built up, what their differential is and what that means for the ratepayers. We went through a process, gateway process. As I said, we started with 50 odd options. We're down to about 3 at the moment. Gateway process was aligned. It was in council's LTP. Is it anywhere near that number? Is it above or below the line? We've sort of narrowed down that option list. And so there's certainly some standout ones there that involve either using the ponds or not using the ponds, and we're working our way through that at the moment, just getting some better refinements on that. And we've looked at, as I say, a lot of consenting risk, event, security considerations, and about solutions surety. And this is with the iwi groups as part of this decision-making framework. So what we're saying is, this is quite a techie thing, but I'll try and present it simply. The actual pollutant loadings to the river at the whole system, both the Tūtainui and the Ringisiko, that red dashed line represents the current levels of pollutant loadings going into the river into both waterways as they stand at the moment. And we're then comparing our options as to how much pollutant they're putting into those, putting into the system. So some options are better than others in terms of reducing the pollutants that end up in the waterways. That makes sense. So obviously at Falls, there'll be more flow going into the Rangitikei than there is now, but the quality of that will be far, far better than what's going in there at the moment, just because it's Falls only. Even though, it's about a 1 to 4.5 ratio between Martin and Falls in terms of flow volumes. That makes sense. So instead of 1 at the moment, we'll have 5 times the flow because of the multiple. So, we've done all this. These are comparative loadings. So the Tūtainui, that's the pollutants at the moment. All the options, nothing. So that's a really good outcome for Ngāti Apa. And so all that cost and non-cost comparisons, there's a couple of options that are really standing out now. One involves the ponds and one involves a proper modern mechanical plant. Okay. So at the moment, we're just going through the new regulations, have us doing an assessment as to the risk of algal growth in the river. That's a requirement in the new regulations. We're trying to assess at the moment, are the existing ponds leaking through the floor? And is that discharging pollutants to the groundwater? We're looking at that co-design with the iwi of that land passage arrangement at Falls. Refining and looking at also what's a trade waste agreement with Dansco look like? Because for them, it's a commercial decision, right? They've got to reconsent their discharge. They've got to operate their process. Is it worth them doing that versus what council might charge them as a trade waste customer? There's a program. This is the last slide. On track to identify the preferred option in late July, with the hope of putting that to the August council meeting for ratification at the back end of August. And then from there, the team will be under the hammer to produce the assessment of environmental effects and the resource consent application by late November. So we've communicated this with Horizons since day dot, and they're totally on board with where we're going. So there's no surprises from their point of view. So the idea of doing that is that once the consent's lodged, hopefully it'll be a fairly expeditious, expedient processing of that consent and granting of that consent, because they've been aware of everything going from 2 years ago. There you go.
Okay, so thank you for that update, Steve. I think there's a couple of takeouts there. It's a big project that's ongoing. It's been around for a long time. We have multiple different partnership considerations across the board. We've got multiple stakeholders to consider. The issue doesn't go away no matter what we do. What we're ultimately trying to address is the negative impacts as best we can to the receiving environment, and that should be at the forefront of our mind, coupled with the best cost analysis that we can put forward to achieve it. Consenting is not cheap. We bring 2 plants into one. We only go for 1 consent rather than 2. Consenting is a cost of several $1 million, and it's a regular thing. So I'm particularly interested in it for you, Steve, about the fact that ANSCO have a consenting matter that they need to address. And from a business point of view, I can see why they would be looking at those options. Once again, just an information document, lots of numbers there, very, very high-end, broad brush type numbers. We can't take anything out from those, but it does give you an idea of some of the issues that Steve and the team have been working with, and an update on some of the matters that we still need to ultimately address and fix. So,
Dave, just one last point I did mention, the new regulations, the consents that get granted under the new regulations are for a period of 35 years.
significantly longer than what we're dealing with now, correct?
Yeah.
So again,
That is how they've been set up. There's no alternative periods anymore.
So we need to take that into consideration, our thought process about what the long-term cost impacts. Diana, with your question about operation costs, keep that in mind when we're making these decisions as we go forward. We're way further down the line in our discussions and what's happening next week. We are thinking 20, 30 year out discussions.
And this will be passed to the new water
It
entity.
will pass over to the new water entity ultimately when that is formed, the CCO, but that does not negate our responsibility as councillors to make prudent decisions for the benefit of our community, our district. So that even sitting back and saying it will pass over is not something I'd encourage. We still need to make prudent, proper, business case driven decisions that consider all the factors that I've
That
mentioned.
was my point. It's good for
Yes.
council to
Yeah.
put their point across
Yes.
about what solution they want, because in the long run, this will be under Central District's water.
So the sooner we can make some decisions, the sooner we can have this as a project for our district forefronted to future decisions that may be made by the CCO and that board. That we've done the practical first steps to assist with that program, and that's some of the work that Steve's doing.
So regional council are expecting that we rattle on with the program irrespective of when the CCO stood up.
Yes.
That is a council obligation, given the history with the consents here. They've been, they were, they had expired some years ago, in one case, many years ago. So regional council are expecting we just rattle on,
Yes.
kick the can down the road as far as they're concerned.
Yes, and we have reiterated that via our chief executive, Carol, through to the council, and all our previous decisions on this have been in conjunction with the regional council to protect us from infringements and things that we are operating on expired consents. But it's only because of the fact that we have pushed on and made some decisions around this matter that's enabled us to keep doing it. Councillor Shalin, I saw your hand up.
So if we get approval to discharge the river, then we'd sell that land that we've purchased as Bulls.
That would be, you would think so, yeah.
That would be a council decision, but just on that subject, I would note in the financial reports today, at our follow-up meeting, there is a line showing income from that block of land. So I just parked that thought. Again, strategic decision made at the time, as an option that we were faced with under the rules that we were operating under. The rules have changed. That block of land certainly would be available for sale, and at this stage is producing income in a lease arrangement. Councillor O'Fee.
With our consents that further on, I see, there's a huge amount of consents that aren't compliant. And what sort of, I think there's, we've got 184 consents and 82 of them are uncompliant.
Could I suggest we just park that, because that's further on in our reporting of today's thing. And I know some of the answers, but I'd pass that through to staff to answer. So just park that thought and come back to that as we move on through today's program, if that's okay. Steve, thank you.
No worries.
You said you had 20 minutes. My reckoning was about 45. So we'll keep you in check next time, but I don't know if you could be 100% held responsible for that, given the high level of interest from the committee.
Certainly Martin Balls, it's one of the bigger capital items this council will be dealing with in any period. So it's quite important that we get it right.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that to this meeting, as opposed to being in a workshop meeting, because we are being live streamed, and I think it helps some of our residents understand just some of the complexities of what we need to address with a long-term lens and view to some of the matters that we need to address. So thanks, Steve.
Thank you, and good morning.
All good. Sophie, did you have a question for Steve?
I'll do around the, this report, once we get back to that.
Okay. So that was just that particular report. So before we receive that report, which will be separately reported, I think. Or was that just going to, that's all under that. Okay. So before we carry on with that, Fee, your question?
Just with regards to that budget line, in there, 3.4 financial summary, actual spend at 1.61. I assume that doesn't include the farm, and so I'm questioning that.
Can we just work through each
Yeah,
project?
is it-
Project there, under the wastewater thing, Mark,
Sorry, are you in the report that we
I'm
just
in the
reviewed?
project update report.
Okay.
that we started. So,
Yeah,
And-
I can see.
Okay, well, let's just come back to, well, we just had a quick refresh. We're on the
Yep.
project update report, which was that we took the presentation from Steve first.
Yeah.
So we'll follow back down the line, we'll carry on and then pick up Fee's question.
Yep.
There.
Thank you,
That's-
Mr. Chair. I can
that's
see
okay.
it as on page 9. It's the summary, the budget summary of the Martin de Bulls project, and it's 1.61 million. Councillor's fees correct. We purchased the land under the previous LTP budgets. The 85.36 is this 24 to 34 LTP total budget, which excludes the purchase of the land.
Can you just run that, say that again? I've just lost my place there.
Yeah, so we purchased the land
Yeah.
under the previous long-term plan budget.
Yes.
This 85.36 million is all the money included in this LTP for this project, so it excludes the purchase of the land that was done before.
And so what about, so all work to do this project in that previous 10-year plan, is that just wiped as well?
No. So that is, so the total thing at the end will include the pipeline.
So does the 85.36 include the farm?
No, it does not include the farms.
And so work done in the previous long-term plan towards this project, is that not included in 85.36 either?
No.
I find that confronting.
So this LTP, we started the process. If you look at the LTP over the first 3 years, there's $250,000 a year over the first 4 years in there for the consenting process. That's what we're working on now. This is this part of the work. Then there's upgrades that will have to be done to both plants while we go through the consenting process. That's year 5 and 6. That's 5 million, 5 million. And then in year 10, 11 is 35 and 35. So that's 70 million altogether to construct the new plant. So that's this
I'm
project.
just wondering, then, can you research for us how much has already been spent on this project in the previous LTP, so we can get a total cost of this project?
I'll go back and have a look, but there will be multiple LTPs. It won't just be the one.
May well be, but I believe the ratepayer deserves to know the total cost of this project, just because we're 10 years later and whatever. And that we don't drop that cost.
Yeah, so we'll see what we can find as a total cost spent to date. I think just the point to be made, this really started year 1 of this LTP that was agreed
No,
that
so-
this is how we're going to go.
I mean,
We're
from the
gonna-
point of view of the farm, I mean, that has been a cost against, I would have thought, that was a cost against this project. And that we're not looking at that. That's what I find shocking.
I'll see what I can find if we edit it.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where you're going with
Yeah.
that one, but I'm sensing that it's something that needs to be fleshed out a little bit more, because I'm not fully understanding the question. But I'm also not fully understanding the answer either.
Can I just, if I may,
Yeah.
just clear something up. So in my mind, a project has a start and a finish, always.
Mhm.
So this reflects this LTP project for this work. This reflects that. That's the approved budget. We have a start point and a finish point. What Councillor Fee is talking about is things that have been spent before that potentially doesn't fit into this project.
Not as it related to this project or not. If it's not related to this project, then I wouldn't see it in that budget line, but
So-
just because it's in the previous 10 years.
So the purchase of the land, as an example, it's not included in this project because we already own the land. So when this project started, the land was already purchased. So this is where it becomes a bit grey. We can go back and look at all the money that's been spent on these assets, so we can have a total asset value at the end of it. That's what we'll do, because it needs to be depreciated and all the rest. But it's not part of this project.
Just also
Part of the
thinking,
life,
yeah.
part of the life of the
Yes.
project. And if I understand
Different
councillor
projects.
Dalgiddy right, she's trying to understand the life of the project across the multiple years, as opposed, and I get what Arno's saying, is this is our budget that we're adhering to.
Also,
Yeah.
the language there, for instance, is not correct. The life of the project, it's not correct. It's different projects that had a start and finish, start and finish, start and finish. I think we need to look at the total value of asset at the end of it. So that will include all those bits of work.
I think we're hearing what's wanted. Can you just let us?
Sure, thank you.
Just because there is also the shovel-ready money is going to sit in there somewhere too.
Yeah.
Which was given to us, which was on the project, but wasn't funded by us. So where does that sit as part of the
Well, it's just the same as the Taipi Town Hall, 2 million goes into that project, but that, we don't have to fund that. But it's still part of that project.
So little bit of a disconnect in our thinkings on that one, so I think we need to perhaps just flesh that out. Is that something that you could circulate to us? Is it something that needs to come back? I mean.
I'm happy for it to come back in another meeting.
Yeah, fair question, Pete. Thank you for raising it. I've now probably got more questions bouncing around in my head for you raising that to seek that. So we will bring that one back. Councillor Picadjola, you've got your hand up down there.
Yeah. So it makes sense in my head that from different time periods that there are specific projects that you've got to report back on. That makes sense. And it also makes sense that because of the time frame that it's taken, say, for this to be kicked off, that there will be an ending point for everything. And you've just said to us that there's multiple projects that have happened, and that makes sense in my head as to why you're not going to be reporting on money that was spent previous, because it was taken into consideration in that time frame. But my question is that how it is across every project? So given that we've got numbers, so the town hall, everything, that's what it is. That's the way that it works in every single project that we do, if it goes across more than one LTP.
No, I would not say that's common across all of them. This one has been going for a very long time, and it has very large number of different things that's happened over that time. All the others are much shorter. What I don't want to do in a project report is report on things that's not part of that project, because it becomes too difficult to keep track of all of it. What I will do with this request is I will add in the total costs spent to date. And we can just put that up.
Yeah, supplementary, Picadjola.
Can you tell me what other projects fit under this category where you're going across potentially multiple? Sorry, it's my first assets and infrastructure meeting for many years. Is there a lot? Do we hold a lot on our books, or is this it's pretty much just this?
Pretty much. I'm trying to think of all the others. I think Ratana is probably the only other one that's been long, but it is all that we haven't spent large sums of money except maybe the land purchase there. But that's probably about it. The others are the others are more concise and has a start and finish.
I think we probably need to flesh this one out a little bit better. Perhaps Arno and Carol in the conversation with Councillor Dalgety there, so we're on the same page as to what might be the information that is being sought. I think would be prudent. The question's been asked. It's a fair question. And my sense is that Councillor Dalgety is seeking better clarification for the answers that we're not going to really be able to provide at this meeting. So I'd encourage that conversation to be had to satisfy councillors, because there's more questions asked. So we can carry on stepping through the report. Councillor Fair, are you happy with that to try and dig that one out a bit further?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the wastewater projects we discussed in quite a bit of detail with Steve. I'll move on to the water projects, page 13. The first one there is the Markham Water Strategy. We have a report coming to council next week. I would suggest that will have a lot more information than this, and we will update this after that meeting.
Councillors, you're all aware of where we've got to with that from our previous workshops, that we've got some reports coming back to us, which have been compiled for next week, as Mr. Bernardi has said. Looking around, everyone's clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Community facilities. We start off with the Martin offices and library. Do we have any questions on that one?
Just a comment, we're just not filling in the budget line up the top in the heading there. That would be good to put that budget, total budget amount in there. So from the third line, it was.
Oh, I see.
Just on
It
that,
hasn't changed.
Thank you.
But we can add that.
good catch. Fee. Just remember, this is a new reporting style that Arno alluded to at the beginning of today's meeting. It is being done in conjunction with a conversation that Arno and I had together, and was also born out of a conversation that I think came from councils at the workshop to look at this reporting. So there's some tweaks to be made, as Arno indicated. We're happy to make those tweaks as we go along.
Yeah, that's a good spot. We'll do that.
I know the town hall budget's not in there either, so we need to just.
They are at the bottom, approved
Oh,
budget,
and
they
then-
are there, but,
Okay,
but we,
not at the
no,
time.
we can add them in. I see some of the wastewater ones do have it,
Yeah.
and obviously it's fallen off as it's gone on.
So we'll capture that somewhere
Yeah,
along the
we'll
line.
fix that up.
Thank you.
Right, the next one is the Martin EOC.
So I'm just interested in the schedule there and the design on hold enclosure. On hold pending closure. Sorry, I forgot my glasses today, which is And the RFIs, can you just elaborate what that's about, please?
So there was, we submitted the resource consent application, so there's a few RFIs that's come through that process. So some of this affects the design, so we're trying to sort out those RFIs, which we have done at the moment. So the architects have gone back to just redrawing drawings basically. And we expect design to finish in the next 10 days or to 2 weeks. I think that's the deviance we're talking about.
Yeah, thank you.
RFIs being request for further information from one party back to another party to enable the resource consent or the consenting process to continue. Until that's answered, it's normal process that they be put on hold to go forward.
Right, so we'll move on. Thank you, Ishwar. The next one there is the Taipei grandstand. We just put a short note in there for this report. As things develop in that space more, we'll flesh it out and add similar amounts of information. Next one is the Taipei Town Hall. Any questions on that one?
Councillor Wong.
Yeah, just thinking, I'm glad to see it's all green. We did have some other information that was brought up, sort of parallel to this project. Do we need to, and public excluded, do we need to discuss that at some other time? Was that?
Was the information?
That was the workshop item to look at whether there was any
Also,
to be made, and the feedback I got was continue with the resolution as it stands.
That was the discussion about with the change of the government's status on earthquake
looking at that, yes.
what effect would that have? Yeah, we certainly, I think we did flesh that one out a little bit in the workshop environment.
We did.
Yes.
Will that be brought back for a discussion at any? I think you're correct, but I just thought we may need to.
Because we're still acting on the council resolution as it
Thank you.
stands, and that's what the message was from the mayor was and the council was there was no desire for us to bring anything else back. Just to continue with where we are, which we never stopped anything
Yeah,
anyway.
of course.
Yeah, my recollection is correct that it was discussed in some detail, and that whilst the government had taken a bit of a change in some of the regulations around the earthquake-prone buildings, the feeling of the room and the meeting was the time that didn't necessarily change or make any material effect to the scope of what we're looking to achieve with regards to the Taipei Town Hall Community Centre and the benefits that we hope to make for the community up there. We felt that they didn't really ultimately change the scope and desire that we were looking to put forward. That's my recollection of it. Trusting councillors were the same on that, but that's where we got to at that workshop. Yeah.
Right, thank you. We'll move along. The next one is the Martin Swim Centre. And again, there's a report coming to council next week that details a lot about the red dots there. Any questions on that one?
Councillor Sharma.
Just one question, you got building consent issued. If it hadn't been approved yet, how can you get a building consent?
Yeah, so what happens is we do a detailed design, but we can't go to the market until we have a building consent, because the building consent process might add stuff.
Okay.
So we've gone through all of that in December. We've gone to the market. We now have tenders back.
Yeah.
Thank you, councillor Sharma. Further questions on that one? Important to note, a very detailed report is coming back to us at next week's council meeting to hopefully give us some guidance as to how we proceed forward with this project. Doing nothing further on that. Looking to councillors. Anything popping up? Vicky Jordan, no, not from you. So on the grounds of that, I'll move from the chair that the project update report be received, seeking a seconder. Councillor Fee, thank you. All those in favour? Against? That motion is carried. You don't quite get out of the hot seat just yet, Arno. We move into the next one, consent compliance report, which we'll step through that. And noting that that was a question that Councillor Fee had, we'll bring that to the table as we step through this report, Councillor.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. We start off with water supply compliance. The two in red really were driven by the weather event. We had power cuts across the northern part of the district. And what would have happened, the reservoirs would have been drawn quite low. When the power came on, we had to fill them up, so we would have exceeded our intake limits daily to get them full again. Then if we look at the next page, there are requirements for turbidity. There was a problem in the same time because as the water flow in the rivers increase, the turbidity in the river increases, it becomes very difficult for those plants to comply. And then at the bottom end there, you can see turbidity comes up quite a bit. I'm just looking at what really stands out. I think the most important comment though is, although some of those were non-compliant, the water was not ever not safe to drink. The challenge for us is just to continuously comply with all these rules and requirements. It's very challenging, and you have one weather event like that, and it can throw a lot of your compliance out. The problem also with compliance, if you miss one thing for a plant in the year anyway, you're not compliant for the year. But it's really difficult to get it.
All complete that again, one failed part. Negates the compliance for the whole year. Got you just.
So the bar is set very, very high, and it is very, very complex to achieve it, especially for us across a very large district with very small plants that are subject to power dips and a whole lot of challenges.
I think we currently operate 6 or 7 different water treatment plants. Seven different water treatment plants in varying different scales and sizes. Councillor Charlotte, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, under your consent compliance report, Martin, Tybee and Bulls are compliant. On the other side, no action required, consent expired S124.
Yep. So section 124 means we have submitted our consent application. They've come back with some further information requests, and we are busy working on getting those back to them.
So they're not compliant?
Yeah, they are compliant. Yep. So once you've submitted your application for new consent, you keep going under the existing consent. There's existing use rights until you step through that whole process and you've got the new consent.
Yeah, similar matter to what Steve was discussing with that whole wastewater discharge thing. Sort of working on expired consents with the approval of the consent authority to existing use rights. Councillor Wong, you had a question?
Just the number of non-compliances that we have, is there infringements that come with this, and any financial penalties, or are we, there is? Are they reported to us? And
They will be.
They will be? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, generally, we pick that up in our risk and assurance compliance reporting, and also that being finance, if that would be picked up or captured.
where do we highlight enforcement action or
I think that
anything?
would come under our risk assurance.
Yeah, risk
I
and
would have
assurance
thought.
and statement of service performance. In
Oh,
the,
yes, it would
yeah.
come under
So
that
that's a
too.
quarterly update.
Comes to council.
And then you'll see, not so much any enforcements, but you'll see any issues where we haven't met them in our annual report as well.
That's right. And we've got risk and assurance upcoming as a first meeting shortly, so that would be
29th May.
retrospective. That's retrospective backwards to ultimately start of the triennium, would it be?
September was our, yeah, correct.
So
Yes.
it'll be a retrospective meeting looking back, and should any compliance reporting like that, or issues like that will be brought to that risk and assurance
Yes,
meeting.
if we've had any in that period.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Brown, I think.
That does answer a lot of my questions. My question I asked earlier, but you know, what 44% of the compliance is going into the state of being non-compliant? Doesn't that leave us very vulnerable at times?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, pretty much, yes.
Some of the issues we have are things within our consents that we just cannot meet. You know, one is that power, you know, to have no loss of power is completely out of our control. There are other things in other consents that we know are unachievable, so they will just show up the whole time as not achievable, and potentially when we go for new consents that can be rectified, but until we are through that process, but a thing like a power cut will never be achievable.
But it's a question that I certainly raised my first time on council, having looked at many of these over the last number of years. You see red and you look at that and go, well, that's obviously an issue, but it's also to note there's Falls wastewater treatment, non-compliant to 25th, was non-compliant for 1 day. So understanding what that non-compliant is, that could be a spike in something that's caused something, or it's a missed report, or understanding what the non-compliant is, could be water related, drinking water, wastewater related, discharge related, but it could also be I'm guessing a small failure in a health and safety matter report could crop up that, you know, the gate wasn't locked properly or something like that, could actually also equal to non-compliance. So understanding what the non-compliant is equally as important as determining what's the degrees of non-compliant. And it's easy enough to say, well, non-compliant is non-compliant, but there are varying different degrees that cause it over what can be very complicated consent conditions that, when they were applied for, didn't foresee issues that have developed over a period of time, which we end up having to chase quite regularly to try and fix, is one of the issues with consenting. And with these new standards that we've heard from Steve Khan today, we can hopefully alleviate some of these to longer term 25, 30, 35-year consents, bringing conditions together under two plants, which deal with Martin and Bulls for a start. So that's ultimately what we're still trying to achieve, but we have to report on these documents. They will always be retrospective in their reporting because it's backwards viewing. We just need to know that everything that's possible can be done is being done, and that we're working in conjunction with Horizons District Council to regional council to address these matters as best we can. So it doesn't look like good reading when you see all that red, but that understanding what the red actually is, I think, is important.
Thank you. We'll quickly look at the wastewater side. The Martin wastewater treatment plant, you can see the red is really over the winter months. It's subject to I&I issues and will be caught up in the Martin de Bulls project. So we're trying to resolve that. The Taipi wastewater treatment plant, you'll see at the top, it's got a volume, effluent, and environment. So we have to comply with all three of those different items on all the consents. So we have a dated volume, we have a peak volume, we have all kinds of regulations under volume. Effluent's the same, and then environmental is all the pollutants that we have to achieve, the limits on those. So you have limits on your effluents, and then you have limits in the receiving environment. So Taihape, the volume is a problem. That's what Steve was talking about. The consent that we cut will never achieve those. It's above that. So when they submitted the consent, the two of them, Hunterville and Taihape, those volumes were incorrect. So we cannot comply with. And that's what we're working on there with Steve. The Bulls wastewater treatment plant, again, it's volume mostly that's driven non-compliance. So a similar result will apply, and Steve alluded to that a lot of those potential solutions that's on the table for the new plant also includes I&I and Bulls and environment. The Mangaweka plant, we had an issue there. The biggest driver of the non-compliance was our UV unit was very old and stopped working. We tried to replace it, couldn't find, so we had to find an alternative, which we did. That's now been installed, so we expect that to improve. Hunterville is the one I mentioned earlier, so volume is always going to be a problem because that number was incorrect. And then the other one that we really struggle with is on the effluent side, is the phosphorus out of the pipe. Our limit is 0.01 milligrams per litre, and it's just not achievable. And how these things happen is with a consent, if there's a hearing, you go to the hearing, it's unknown at that time what the limits would look like. It depends on the hearing, it depends on who submits, depends on the evidence that's prepared. And then you have your consent with the limit set by the commissioner, and for us, the DRP is not achievable for that plant. Ratana, volume is the problem there. But as you know, we're trying to resolve that with a new discharge consent and Koitiata as well. So it's interesting what Steve mentioned earlier. We could resolve both of those in one go, potentially. All right.
Right, questions popping up from that one. There's a lot to take in there. And pretty short.
Not a question, but just a comment. So thank you for being able to give more explanation as to why none of them are compliant and just in the breakdown of what's involved as to, volume, effluent and environment, because it's new.
Yeah, some of these consents, even the ones that are current, are still old. If that sort of makes sense, they were actually applied for some time ago. We still have to report to the consents via a reporting process to the various different agencies and departments and through council. So it's difficult to, understanding what the read is, I think, is important. So thank you for that. Any further questions on the consent compliance report? Being done, seeking a mover for that. Moving Pikitiora, seeking a seconder, Councillor Sharlin. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Voting update, sorry.
Just one comment. Great to see the glossary.
Yeah, yes, that is helpful.
Just as we step, before we step into roading, just give some thought to that reporting. We would love to hear from you. Come back to me if you're going, if you could just add another line in on something, we're happy to do that. I'll take it through to Arno and staff to do that. If you're looking at it going, just missing something, I'd like to see either to the left or to the right. We are just testing this new format. So please take the opportunity to send something through to me. I'll get it on to the staff and go, could we add this as a line item if it's going to help with your consideration of reporting? So please do that. I would encourage that. Councillor Sharlin.
I'd just like to thank Arno and his team for this new reporting. It's very, very good, very informative.
Thanks. Leads to discussion, which is always important. Thank you for that. Councillors, moving on to roading.
Thank you. This is a rating update for February. We haven't been here for a while, so also when the contract kicked off, we talked about getting some sort of repeatable and consistent reporting. So haven't really stepped through that. So this month we've got the monthly report from Downer, from the IDT, which we call the Integrated Delivery Team, which is us and Downer. So we have these meetings monthly. So I've got the agenda and items discussed in February attached to this report. So if we want to step through that first, that's at the end of of the update report. I'm a little bit mindful this might be in the weeds for this forum, and so I'm happy to take feedback if you think it's a little too operational. So it's just the IDT agenda.
Could you just give us a page to page 35? Thank you.
35.
So the first step there, zero harm, that's a downer terminology for health and safety, environmental issues, that sort of thing. That's front and centre for them as far as they, the way they do their work. So the first one there is around Kaimatawe and Wairuhi sites, where we were looking at environmental issues and consenting for those two sites. And they go on to say there's no health and safety things to report. The next page was around First Day Back, which was a downer initiative where they get all staff together and they run through what they're, they reiterate all the safety briefings and issues that they need to discuss with their staff. It's an annual thing that they do at the beginning of the year. 4 months goes into financial tracking. I've put another updated graph in here because this report was a month out, so we've got some more up-to-date figures. Graphs on the right there, we've got a series of those, probably 20 odd, that feed into that main budget tracking overview. So they're not all there, they've just got the bigger ticket items. We talk about performance framework. This is something that we're getting in place. So it's the crux of the contract where we measure a whole different series of KRAs and score them against them. There are some financial incentives and penalties there that we can apply if they achieve or don't achieve those things. So we're still working on implementing those. The next page was around the emergency event. We see that highlighted text. That was Carol's bullet points that you put out for a feedback session that we held in here. So Downer guys were involved in that. We just talked about what went well, what didn't go well, what we thought we could improve on next time. Next page, we talk about a risk and opportunity register, which we want to address obviously all the risks, but then all the opportunities as well. So when we see something that we can do better, we note it and look at how we can get there. Value added ideas. That's another one. Just registering and recording things that we've done there, saved money or we've moved forward in a better direction. So FBS, that was the foam bitumen stabilisation on the Taipi Napier Road. It's something we haven't done here before. That type of treatment, it was quick. Got the job done, good outcome. So in normal terms, we would be doing an overlay that could last up to 6 weeks. That was done in about 5 days. They just tune the pavement up and mix up the bitumen and hot foamed mix and just roll it out. So we might bring you something in more detail on that just to go through the project and what we saved.
Just from my share very quickly.
Yeah.
Toi Toi Road is fantastic.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, could you?
And I'd just like to feedback that I think that the work that's been done on the G landing is great. I went over that road yesterday and looked at how thick the bitumen, whatever it's, spots on it, but most of it's pretty good.
Yeah, we had some issues up there with this site where we had the fatality. Because that site stopped mid-sealing, there was a few issues there with clumps of asphalt, because basically the bitumen was fresh, it was exposed for a day and a half or a day. So there was some kind of tidy up issues there, but that's been resolved. I think what you're talking about is the Gentle Annie where we've got that steep section.
Yeah, specifically there.
So trucks were getting stuck there. We fixed that by laying quite a thick layer of asphalt. So it's good movements. We had another fatal in February out on Santoff Road. By all accounts, there's no recommendation to come back from our investigation of the site. So not something we want to be dealing with, but it happens every now and again. The next reference here is an AMA. It's an asset management maturity assessment where Downer will come in and they'll go through our whole process, all the things that we do to make things move forward. And they'll give us recommendations on things that we aren't achieving or where they think we can do better. FWP, that's Forward Work Programming. So, model is a sort of computer software program that takes a whole lot of data inputs and suggests a program for 10 years. So we've got that now. I'm just comparing that with what we know and what we think it's missed, because it's a computer. It's really, depends on what goes in. If you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. So we're looking at that at the moment. And once we've finished that, we'll have a 10-year program ahead of us. The next bit's around projects, rehabilitations. We're at about 2 million, where our budget was 1.9, but that foam bitumen stabilisation job, we're expecting to save some, so should be around about right on that one. Reseals are looking okay. Got a few more left in Taihepi, but it's pretty much done. And the maintenance is rolling along. Emergency works has sort of interrupted the program in February. You just got to deal with that as it comes. We've got a little bit more on that in the report. There's another item there. And that flash looking dashboard on the last page is called a renewals tracker. That's another dashboard that I'd like to sort of keep presenting to you guys. And it just shows the program of our reseal and rehab programs as they sort of roll through the season. Those reports are interactive, but only if you're on the Downer website. So we can sort of drill in, but every item on that report, you can click in and see the data behind it. The next one is just a schedule around how they work in reseals, that table. And then we talk a little bit more about emergency works and some more significant issues there. We've just done the seal extension on Watershed, and yeah, we got whacked. The seal was damaged and a few tree falls there, so I'm pretty sure that's fixed out now. Need a little update on some of the larger projects. Maramutu Road, we're working with Horizons there to get a sort of a joint approach on how we're going to get through that, as they notice. There as well, I think Philip's been up there last week. Drainage improvements on a few projects there. School signage, that's another one that we've yet to kick off, where we're putting those speed reduction signs around schools. We've done half the schools in the district, we've got another about 10 or 11 to do. They talk about resources, bringing in other teams in from other sites around the country to help us get through our programs. RFSs, that's another interesting one. A lady from Downer who's put together a dashboard for us, which I'll show you in a minute, which takes magic data and just puts it in a form that we can easily use to see how we're tracking with our response and completion times. And people in culture, they talk about their training. They've had a whole bunch of guys through chainsaw training. It's, I guess, the emergency event alerted us to the fact that we didn't have enough chainsaws and enough people to use them. So we're set for the next one. Health and wellbeing, it's another initiative that they have through Downer. They're always doing something. They have that was the Summer of Pride. Now the next one now is, they're celebrating International Women's Day, those kind of things. They'll bring in people from the business and sort of showcase what they do. One of them is my daughter. She's works for them in Auckland, and they've sort of picked the push was one of what they call the term. It's the ladies in the so it's pretty good. And then it's just the one at the last little. So I'm really welcome some feedback if you think there's too much detail for this meeting.
Thanks, Darren. I think what's really good here is, as this is the first meeting for it, I think it is really good. I mean, for one, I'm assuming all the councils did that, understanding that roading is our biggest capital expense in our budget. Read through this with some interest. You're right in the fact that it is very operational, and I would be thinking to myself that it's a sort of information that as a committee we'd only probably need to look at even yearly. But for us to understand at this first meeting that there are measurements, there are systems, there are processes in place to make sure that we are achieving the best out of this combined contract that we've entered into, and that we're achieving the ability to be nimble, to be smart, to be operational, to be working safe, and to be thinking about our whole capital works program. When I hear terms about, 10-year views and such other things, some of the data in here is down in the weeds. And I don't think we'd need to see that regularly, but I think it's really important for us as governors to understand that it is working and happening in the background to give us some sort of surety. What we really need to know is how we are tracking to our budgets and how we're tracking to our works programs. And if we need to take a little deviation somewhere on a works program because it's more prudent to do so to get a greater outcome and a greater benefit, certainly I would be thinking you'd bring that back to us and say, look, we said we're going to do this, but this now becomes more urgent because it's going to have a better outcome and a better achievement. That's probably the level that we need to know. If that's going to change the rest of it, I think it's great to understand that it's happening. And it gives me some assurance as the chair of this committee to understand that. So that would be my straight off the cuff feedback, but I'd welcome from others. Diana.
I really like you've got on page, I don't know, it's page 39, where you talk about the risk and opportunity within your risk register. And a few years ago now, I went to a course for risk and audit and risk committees, and we went around the room and everybody described what their committee did, and there was actually quite a lot of divergence as to how much they covered. It was just financial or where it all went, but the idea of including opportunity in there, I think is fantastic. So
It's something that we are conscious of all the time, and we with this contract, we've made a number of improvements. One of them was fund clearance through CBDs was one of those activities that was a bit sort of messy. We tidied that up and we're saving money on doing it by slightly different methodology. Those kind of things we're able to sort of move with it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Baird. Councillor Wong.
Through the chair, I'd like to thank Darren for this report. I like the detail, especially now that you explained it to us. It was a bit overwhelming just looking at the start with, but it's great to see. I don't mind seeing a lot more of this, even though I won't read it all. Just a minor detail, your resealing program through the Taipei Township was well communicated. Thank you for putting leaflets in everyone's boxes. A lot of them who didn't really left their car on the street. But the weather event interrupted that, and there was no communication through any other channels that the days had been, or I didn't see the communication. So does it go back through the communication team through Sophia, or is that a Downer's thing?
It's a Downer thing, but we do link in with Sophia. I think we probably got distracted with the storm and didn't think it through. So yeah, we'll take it on board.
Yeah, I might have missed it, but I know it's hard, but just another thing to lump onto you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Arno, you've got a comment?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the one comment I'd like to make is, with us now having this more collaborative contract delivery model, what I'd like to grow is more confidence in councillors about the transparency of the information in the background. I think in the past there was a bit of frustration when councillors had a question about the roading, why something didn't happen or why something got moved. It sometimes was a little bit difficult to get into the detail. So what we're trying to do now is show you the detail that exists, that if you would have a question, everything is there and we could easily find the answer and bring it back. Or if you'd like to see more detail, we can present that. I think it's just the transparency of the information now is quite a big step up from what we used to have.
I would certainly agree with that comment and statement wholeheartedly.
Just take the rest of it. So we go back to the start of the report. So I just chucked an updated cumulative maintenance renewals graph to show you that we're on track. In February, we're just crossing over the budget line there, and projecting will go a little bit over and then come back for June, which is a pretty standard curve or a track for a heavy renewal program. You start off lightly and it goes heavy and then light goes on. The next one, 2.4, is another standard dashboard they have for maintenance program delivery. Get that monthly and we look at how they trend, what they said they're going to do against what they did, and they get a score. So on the left there, you see 48%, the target is 80. So if they put a program up, we expect them to achieve 80% of what they say they're going to do. So that was February out the window with the storm, so they didn't really have much chance of achieving that. But it's a good report, a bit of attention on what they're doing, and it becomes a bit of a, well, when I was with Downer, it was a competition between different contracts that try and get, to achieve what you said you were going to do, and it sort of drives a bit of healthy competition, I think. The next one was the RFS dashboard. That's magic data. I think this is going to be a real benefit to all of council. We've trimmed it back just for roading, but this could be used for everything. And it's just a really good intuitive way of using the data that we've already got. So it's another win for this contract, I think. Interesting if you look along the bottom bar graph to see February with, we track along at 80, 90, 100 RFSs, and then the storm hits and boom, we're sort of running around a bit. Then there's an achievement stats table that comes straight out of our assets database. And then we just change the filters, so how much work we've done within a set period. So we could take that back to the contract start or monthly. This is February's data. So a couple of hundred potholes, edge break 58 metres, grading 108 Ks. That's the kind of quantity of work we're getting through. It's not an exhaustive list, so some of the things are done under day works that don't come through this sort of things. Fort Brooks program, we talked about that. The storm event, when I came to you in February and we discussed the quantum of work sitting about 2 million, that was the information we had at the time. I prepared a bit more information, a few more things came in, a few more professional services costs. We got up to 3 million. We submitted that to NZTA. The process around it is that they will assess each job within it, or the jobs that they look at, and come back. They might have a few queries or a few that they might not agree with, and they have come back. It's about 2.7 now. So now we're waiting for that to be finalised. Once that happens, I'll come back and we'll talk about the local share for the difference between 2 million and whatever's approved.
Yes, I think that Darren's signalling that there's likely to be another council decision required, and Finance Leanne can give us a steer on how potentially that can be funded if you want us to go ahead with the whole work program as approved. So that would expect to see that it won't be in next week's council meeting because we won't get all the information by then, but the following month.
Yeah, still, we've had feedback from NZTA, so they've done their assessment. Now it goes off to their board, I think. So we haven't got approval yet. So once we've got that,
Needless to say that it was going to have a financial impact that we'll need to consider. That's what the chief executive's signaling. But let's wait to see that report before we make those decisions.
So in the activity management plan. So this is a big bit of work for us. Every 3 years it comes around. So we need to submit our business case and our activity management plan to NZTA for the next 3-year funding block, which is 27 to 30. So we want to come to the next workshop and just run you through a few scenarios and basically make sure our thinking is joined up before we go down the track where we might not be on the right path or the path that you want us to do. So that'll be at the end of this month, and then we'll finalise the activity management plan and business case documents for submission to NZTA in August. The next ones are probably in the weeds again, but car rallies. Last year we had the was last year's one.
Target.
Was it Target?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that the one on the Mitchell Roads?
No.
It was the Daybreaker. So I came to one of the assets and infrastructure meetings, and I was told I should put this through for approval. So the closure of the roads will come definitely to council for approval, but I didn't know that we needed to get the approval to run the event, so I'm just dropping these in now. We've got two later in the year, one at Labour Weekend and one in December.
Yeah, these are, I'm not quite sure that these are council decisions. However, I thought they would have settled the chief executive as an operational matter unless there was something that the chief executive had to decide on that was uncomfortable to make a sole decision that would come to council. These look fairly operational in there, but thank you for reporting on that. It's good to know. I'll make sure I'm around for a couple.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure that there's any decision that would need to be made here by council as a feelings of the operational matter.
I think our request was, to make sure that committee was aware, but also just noting we do publicly notify these, and we've got a very strict process for doing that. So where there are objections, and if there was something we needed you to know, we would certainly bring it back in that form rather than asking for your permission for these, because I'm just not sure that's actually doable for us with timeframes.
No, so we'll definitely come back with the road closure, so that has to be signed off by council, but that'll be later in the year. And the last one here is Kaimatawi Road. So I dropped that one in because the last council, we remember the whole process around that. We had a large slip on a dead end road in the northwest of the district that blocked access to some farm infrastructure and one lifestyle property. Cost was pretty high to rectify the issue. So I brought it to council to highlight the issues that we have, and do we really want to be spending $200,000 or $300,000 to fix an issue that sort of only really benefited two ratepayers? And the answer was yes, so we went ahead with that and had a good outcome. So you're just winding that one up. And that's about it.
Mr. Chair, I just wondered, I think yesterday in the meeting at the NLT, you mentioned you'd like to maybe have a discussion around the fuel impact.
Oh, yes.
As the Downer contract and the Downer work is probably one of the areas that will have a significant impact if there's changes. So I'll just talk from an organisational perspective that we are pulling together an organisational response plan to any impacts that the government's change in phases might have for us, but also the cost. So while we may have a disruption in supply, we're also very wary that there will be significant increase in cost in the short to medium or even potentially long term. So we are looking at that from an organisational perspective within each of the areas that our group managers are, and they're working with teams to do that. But I think Darren's probably got some more information in terms of the actual roading side of things, if you want.
Yeah, I think it is prudent to have this discussion, and it's good to hear that some forward planning is being done, but I particularly wanted to hear what the impacts are likely to be or could well be on our roading program.
So the two issues with the restrictions and the cost increases. So we're discussing what we could fall back to. We've got a really good handle on how we manage what we're doing, so it won't be too much of a drama to roll back to deliver a lower level of service. We're only looking at safety issues. We'd have inspectors out there and we'd have teams that could go and deal with those things rather than managing the network as we do. We might not mow the whole network. We might just look at sight lines, or we might turn it off completely. It just depends on how we go. We're waiting for guidance from NZTA on that. So they're wanting a nationally consistent sort of a focus on that. Haven't received it yet. Then the other thing is costs. So if these costs continue into the next year's renewal programs, we might consider deferral or pushing jobs out rather than spending all the money on fuel, and then when it comes back, if it comes back to a more level playing field, then we can pick that up again. So we're not at that stage now, but it's something that we're looking at. So the contract is set up with what we call cost fluctuations, which is we've done an indice published by NZTA quarterly. There's always a 2-month lag on that. So at the moment, we're working on December indexing. We don't know what March is and we won't know what June is until we get there. So there will be definite impacts, but we don't know what the scale is yet.
So, Arno, comment from you on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's a timely reminder. Over the last week, we've had two of our contractors approach us about the fuel prices. They want to have a discussion, so we'll have to sit down with them. All our contracts are civil, heavily reliant on fuel, so we'll have a conversation. But I think just a heads up that some of these prices might start going up.
I think we all know and feel it ourselves now in personal lives, but start stepping into the business world and see what happens in that space, and the number ratchets up, then take that up a level higher to organisations like Downer and in fact us as a council. The numbers get quite large, and the concern that I had is if these numbers are to continue to grow, for us to stay within our budgetary constraints of our contracts, then the only option that we've got to do is potentially deferring some ceiling works as Darren has mentioned, or is it some sort of a slowdown or reduction in some of our services? Now, none of those are particularly palatable, but we do have to try and manage and stay within our budget. So we want to see some prudent thinking about this, and I'm pleased that that the team, not at both at the Roding and Downer level, but also the whole organisation as a whole, are being pragmatic as to the approach going forward, because the impacts are going to be around 3 to 6 months, in my opinion, as a minimum. And some of those impacts, as you've rightly indicated, aren't actually going to be felt for another couple of months as we move forward with those price fluctuations.
Give you an idea, Downer estimate their monthly BAU usage of 20,000 litres diesel for us. So it's not chump change when you're talking dollar extra.
What you want to do your calculators now to start doing some maths, but the number gets quite big, and I'm no mathematician. So.
And diesel's now more expensive than petrol.
Okay, so thank you for that, and thank you again to the staff for certainly being front-footing what is not only an issue for us, it's an issue for everybody, our citizens, business, country as a whole. Councillor Fee.
I'm not sure that where to bring this up, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a request in Hunterville. They would wonder what the procedure is to get NZTA to consider, they accept that a pedestrian crossing is unlikely to be achieved, but if we could have one of those guardrails in the middle. So what's happening is the Argyle was being used a lot more. Honest Wolf was going across the other side of the state highway, and so we've got a lot of people trying to cross that state highway. We don't have enough parking, and so it's become a safety.
So it's a central medium safe zone or something. What do they call those, Darren? You can
refuge. Yeah, pedestrian refuge.
Yeah.
So what is the procedure to perhaps get that in some sort of work frame?
I'll have to follow up on what's already been done, because I know we have been talking about it.
Right.
But I can't answer right now.
That'd be good.
Just to follow that through though, and I'm assuming it probably has been, but is there a track and trace? Has it been followed through for a direct request from service? And if not, does it come from an individual?
No, is that just so we just put an RFI?
Yeah, but perhaps with support of the Hunterville Community Committee Chair.
Right.
So it becomes a reasonably joint Hunterville submission, but via a request for service, which can get some track and trace and follow through to the Darren and the NZTA team. I think would be the best way to go.
Thank you.
But get lots of people to sign it, Justin. But I'm thinking that would be the most appropriate way for it to flow through. Where have we got to now?
Receive the report.
Okay, second to move of the report, Councillor Sharland is moving. Councillor Field is seconding. All those in favour? Against? Excuse me, motion is carried. And that brings us to the close of today's meeting. So nothing more for me, just to give some thought to the format of today's meeting in our order papers. feed them through to me. I'll get them through to Arno, and we welcome any additional information that you would need. And I think we are done. Thank you